how are you doing? How's the energy in the room? Woo! Oh my God, that's a fabulous crowd. I know we have had a full day of panels and demos, and you still have such energy. That's the Bay Area spirit. So let's give a round of applause for all the people in the room. Doing a great job, guys. Okay, I know you all are also waiting for the awards. And before we get to the awards, we are going to get through this panel where we are going to dive into crypto, Web3. And I know in a lot of areas, it's like a taboo to talk about these things, but that's why we are here. We are here to dispel the myths and talk about the underlying spirit, why decentralization is important. So our panel is going to focus on that. I have amazing panelists. Their credentials speak for them. And I am Sonia Ahuja. I'm the founder and CEO of Orbis 86. At Orbis 86, we host smaller events, not events like as big as this. We are glad to be partnering with the city of SF for this event. And huge shout out to Ken, Benson, and the Department of OEWD for putting this together. We have many versions of these big events with a goal of onboarding people, educating people about emerging tech trends like Web3, AI, quantum computing, and helping them connect with the right resources to further learn more while removing barriers. So our events are free to attend. We don't try to make profits from the events. It's mostly just to bring the community together. Enough about me. I'm going to pass on the mic to my panelists over here. And you could probably take like 30 seconds to a minute to introduce yourselves and what you're working on. And from there, we'll dive into the questions. So I'm just going to go over to Ken.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ken. I'm the founder of Genius AI. We basically do what they call a DPIN, a decentralized physical infrastructure network. And what that is a bunch of devices like your phone or your home computer that are connected together that do AI processing. And so we're in the process of launching our testnet very shortly here, and it brings down the cost of AI processing almost to zero. And so that's kind of our goal.
Hi, I'm Greg Tanaka. I currently serve on the Palo Alto City Council. Just out of curiosity, how many people here live in Palo Alto? I saw a few. Okay, a handful of you guys. That's awesome. So that's my hobby, so to speak. I'm actually really into crypto. I ran for Congress on a pro-crypto platform, so that's how committed I am. Because the current congressional representative was trying to ban crypto. I'm like, that's totally wrong direction. And then my day job, so to speak, is I'm an entrepreneur. So I work on a lot of AI technology.
Very cool. Hey everybody, my name is Cameron. I've been building in crypto for about 8 years. I currently work at the Near Foundation, where I've been at for the last 4 years. This is pre-network launch, so my role is essentially get all of the infrastructure external out of the Near Inc. team, which is a lot, and now help run a venture studio and investment committee specifically focused on decentralized AI. I also run a nonprofit, totally blockchain agnostic, and we start blockchain development courses at universities. So if you're studying computer science at UCLA, USC, and a bunch of other schools, you can actually get units towards your degree to learn Solidity. And so I've been doing that for about 7 years. And my goal there was to create a completely tax-exempt DAO. So very familiar with like the, I guess, regulatory components of it all. So great to be here.
It's awesome. As I said, we have a very diverse group of panelists over here. We have representation from the industry. We have representation from our Palo Alto City as well, from the government as well. So without further ado, let's just dive into the questions. Greg, I'm going to start with you. Since this is a GovTech panel, definitely want to ask you, given your expertise, and you've been a vocal advocate for Web3, so first of all, thank you for that. And we're talking about technologies like blockchain, crypto. At the surface, a lot of people just see the price of Bitcoin. For probably 99% of the people, crypto is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then that's where it stops. And they are just looking at the price action and they think, oh my God, this looks like a gamble. But there is so much to it under the surface. So what I want to ask you is, in the government sector, what role do these Web3 technologies play, and how can you actually leverage the technology aspect of Web3 to bring more transparency and more openness into what the governments are building?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that Web3 technology, so I think in general Web3 has been kind of looking for an application, and I happen to believe that in government there's a great opportunity, and the reason why is because if you think about what the government is, it's to serve the people, right? To serve people like you, right? Um, and and so the government belongs to the people. And the nice thing about Web3 is that it's all public, it's all public ledger. So you think about, like, say, let's say you look at, let's say, City of Palo Alto. We have zoning maps, right? We have building permits. We have all these things that we do to entitle projects or to make it clear as to what the rules are. And all that should be public, right? And so I think Web3 is a natural synergy to what government does, not just at the local level, right? If you think of, for instance, on the federal level, you have things like copyright, right? You have patents. And those are things that also are really well served to be on a public ledger. And so I think that that there's a lot of synergies to having this kind of Web3 technology in government. Unfortunate problem is that in government, things are very slow. And so new technology doesn't get really adopted quickly. But I also have a kind of like more philosophical, fundamental reason why I'm really into crypto, and I love the crypto ethos, and that has to do with, fundamentally, like, I'm not sure if you guys follow the federal government, like how much money they've been printing, but it's just off the charts, right? I think we print more money than we printed, like, I think the last 4 years or so, we printed more money, or maybe 6 years, I guess. We printed more money than we printed, like, all up to that point in time. So it's pretty wild. And today we accept it. We accept that printing money is okay. And way back when, 2,000 years ago, back when the Roman Empire was around, they used to have a calendar where politicians would set the calendar. Say, well, this year we're going to have 400 days. This year we're going to have 200 days. And that's why it's so hard to know when was Jesus born? Because the years, like, depend on who was in power. And today we scoff at that. We think, there should be 12 months, there should be 365 days, right? It's really clear cut. We don't believe in politicians just willy-nilly making up the calendar, right? But today, we willy-nilly allow people to mess with the monetary supply, right? We have more money, less money, this kind of craziness. And I think that we should have a monetary policy that, like the calendar, right? Where it's set. There's 12 months, there's a certain number of days, and it's not going to be messed with. And if you want to tax people more, right? Do it transparently. Because by inflating the money supply like we have, we've basically taxed every single person in this room about 30 to 50%, depending on your circumstance. So that's a humongous tax. Not just your yearly tax. I'm talking about your net worth, right? We taxed your net worth, especially if it's in cash, 30 to 50%. So it's just wild, and you didn't even know about it. So it's like a thief in the night. And so I just fundamentally really think that the government should be for the people. And I think Web3 crypto is really kind of aligned well to it. I just wish it had more success.
As a follow-up to that question, because Greg, I think you did a great job highlighting not just the inefficiencies of the government in a way, but also how Web3 can help track and monitor. And I don't need to necessarily call things inefficient, but obviously transparency is lacking, right? And Web3 can bring that. And as a follow-up to that question, Ken, I'm going to ask you that how can Web3 and AI, because at Genius AI you're working on both, how can Web3 and AI help cities and governments who are looking to probably even, like, if the city wants to work in Web3, there has to be a tech upgrade. And normally the costs associated with such upgrades are humongous. So how can decentralized technologies and AI help us allow the governments and the cities to do these tech upgrades without the huge monetary tax associated with them?
Sure, thanks for that follow-up question. In general, Genius actually can work on many devices, some older devices as well, including the iPhone 1. So there's really no hardware upgrade for us. It's more of a software upgrade and a network that's being built for it. But it's something that is very easily doable. But the part of the government, they have computers that are older, and so upgrading that, where if you just install our system, then you can get a set of AI nodes that can do the processing for you. And so decentralization in general allows the older devices to be kind of upgraded by sharing resources and things like that. So I think that's a good thing for government, because then they don't have to spend a lot of money, or you don't have to go through them to get the all the procurement and all that kind of stuff, which takes a long time, as Greg was saying. So.
Thank you, Ken. And we have spoken about what Web3 decentralization AI can do for the government. Cameron, I'm going to ask you, what can the government do to support this ecosystem? I think Greg earlier had a great point, right? Like, unfortunately, Web3 and crypto, the way it is being presented, it can be presented in better light. So I would love to hear from you, like the policies, the regulations that we have, from your perspective, what can be better and how can the government support Web3?
Absolutely, thank you. First off is just creating a space to kind of address misinformation, I think is really important. And also highlight like how not to get scammed, because let's get real. There is a ton of fraud in the crypto space. And I think it is important to address and acknowledge and explain to people, hey, these are best practices that you can take in order to not get scammed. But at the same time, create a venue where, you might be able to even address your congressperson and, understand the positions that they take when it comes to like pro or pro or con crypto policies. And kind of just to take a bit of a step back, like, the whole point of crypto is to incentivize certain behavior and make sure that certain things are like publicly available. And what I'm really interested in is this concept of programmable money. I don't think that the world's inherently broken. I don't think there's anything wrong with the ocean or government generally. It's the incentives that power the world, money being the root of all incentive. And so this is the first time in human history we're able to program money, therefore program incentives. Proof of stake protocols, in my eyes, are the first time in history we're able to, as users, dictate which validators receive new money coming into the ecosystem, into the industry, which is inflation. So there's no way right now as a American citizen that I can decide like where inflation necessarily gets allocated to. In a proof of stake protocol, I can. This is really cool. I'd love to see like governments, I know this is like crazy because universities don't even do this, but even run validators. Like that'd be really cool. Like show people that, hey, we now have this new mechanism of programmable money to, really fund the public goods that should be funded in new and unique ways. And so I'm really interested in new mechanisms that, and I'd love to see more pilot programs with governments to fund these public goods. For example, like quadratic funding is a way to honestly get a better sentiment check on what users really want to fund. It is a little bit complicated and does require this like proof of humanity components because if you can't verify humanity, then it's gonna be really hard to block out bad actors.
How many of you in the room know what quadratic funding is? We just have 2 hands up, so
okay.
Maybe you can quickly explain that.
So it's in short, it's a funding mechanism to better understand the desires of the people donating. So Gitcoin is a platform that sort of pioneered a lot of this. And so when who's here familiar with like ranked choice voting? It's like you're able to like rank which politician you might want instead of just voting for one or another. And the whole point here is to better sort of make decisions around what is the sentiment of the crowd. And so the cool thing about quadratic funding is that if there's this pool of money in the middle, you are able to multiply the impact of the money that is being donated. So let's say I want to, who's familiar with like nonprofit matching pools? It's very similar. Like a company is willing to match your donation 1-to-1. Instead, this is matching donations quadratically, which is like almost by the square root, which can be very significant. So your $1 of impact can be $20 of impact allocated to a specific initiative, depending on how many other people vote for that same initiative. And so it gets a little complicated, which is why I think government can also really help with this education piece. And I'm happy to step in wherever I can. But the goal is I would love to see governments, one, create more of a clear space for people to really flag the crap and the benefits of this industry. 2, experiment with new pilot programs on funding public goods in a more efficient way through programmable money. And 3, obviously get clear on regulation. And I understand like local governments can't always do this, but they can provide the venue to talk with the people who can, i.e. Congress people.
Absolutely. And that's where I think this is a great point again, to give a shout out to the city of San Francisco and OEWT for setting up this program, because as you mentioned earlier, scams are very rampant, but do you know that people who are coming here showing their faces and talking in the city building, they are probably not scammers. to that extent, scamming, that's one of the challenges. And Greg, I want to again lean back into what you said earlier, right? There are challenges. We just spoke about scams. So, in your views, what are some of these major challenges that are stopping from the widespread use of Web3 and the adoption of Web3 by cities, governments, as well as other industries in the public sector? And how can we overcome them?
Yeah, I think there's several issues. I think if I think about Web3, and this is more of a general issue, not just for governments, but is usability, right? You have to be a real nerd to use MetaMask and do all this rigmarole. And I'm totally into it, but the average person, they want to use Venmo, right? They don't want to like do all this, all this kind of stuff. And
How many people here know MetaMask?
yeah,
Okay, that's more hands than
well,
quadratic
but
funding.
but I would expect in a crowd like this, right? But if you were to ask, let's say, of the 1,200 or so city of Palo Alto employees, how many people know what MetaMask is? Probably not a single hand would go up, right? And that's part of the problem is like, and also like, the people that tend to get attracted to government are people who are not necessarily technical. They're more, poli-sci majors. They don't like, for me, I'm a CS major, electrical engineer, so I'm really totally into this kind of stuff. But I think people that are attracted to politics typically are very, very non-technical people. And unfortunately, what you do is you have a set of people who are incredibly non-technical legislating incredibly technical technology, right? So like, for instance, recently in California, there was a bill to outlaw AI, right? So there's a SB 1047. Luckily, it got vetoed. But you have people who are well-intentioned but have no idea what they're doing. And same thing with crypto, right? I mean, sure, I understand there's a lot of scams, but a lot of scams, a lot of different things. But it doesn't mean you outlaw paper because people scam people on paper, right? You regulate the scamming. You don't regulate the technology. But crypto in the United States has gotten an incredibly bad rap, right? I think we've had an administration that has, I don't know if anyone here knows Gary Gensler, but Gary Gensler is a piece of work, right? He really has done a lot to, I think about all the entrepreneurs I know that left and go to Abu Dhabi or other places where it's more crypto friendly, but we're losing incredible talent, people, founders, people who are innovators, leaving this country, going to other countries. And so it's something where we have to stop that, right? We have to make it attractive. We want to make sure that we are the hotbed of technology, a place where entrepreneurs want to stay and grow. But we have this kind of like knife over everyone's head. If you develop in crypto, you have this knife over your head because you're not sure you're going to go to prison, right? And that's just crazy. This is craziness. And this anti-AI bill is the same thing for AI developers, where if you design an AI system and 5 derivatives later it got used for something bad, you're liable, right? I mean, that's also craziness. But that's actually what's going on with crypto right now. You have this quashing effect. And crypto also is still early, right? People are still trying to figure out how to use it. It's hard to use, right? There's a lot of usability issues. But then you also have this government, Gary Gensler and team, who are just like, just pounding on it. And I think the combination of those things is not good. And so I think the first step for government is to get out of the way, right? Don't hold a knife over everyone's head. And then I think the other thing is educating themselves, right? So they have to get a little bit more educated about this technology, because there's, like I said, I think Web3 has a natural affinity to government, because so much of what government is actually about public, right? So you want to make sure that the copyright is clear, and that should be on a public ledger, right? In fact, tomorrow night, I think, anyone here know the Story Protocol?
Yeah.
Some of you guys get. So there's the party tomorrow, right? So hopefully I'll see some of you guys there in Palo Alto. Yeah, and so there's these natural affinities to what the government does, because there's probably more so than private companies, more so why this should be on the public ledger. But the people in the government tend to be just incredibly non-technical. When I talk about any technology on City Council Palo Alto, and this is Palo Alto, which is supposed to be kind of advanced, just people's eyes just totally glaze over. No idea what I'm talking about, right? And that's part of the problem. So we need also elected people who have a bit of a clue. Like a lot of I think, so if you look at other countries, you look at what percentage of the elected officials actually have some sort of STEM background, it's actually relatively high. The United States is abysmally really low. And unfortunately, a lot of what drives our country now is technology. And yet we don't have people who really know what's going on. So lots of problems.
Thank you, Greg. And I can attest to it. I mean, I came to US from India, obviously for better opportunities. But in Web3, I'm seeing that reverse brain dump, because you have American citizens now going to other countries, like going to Dubai or going to Switzerland and setting up their there are businesses there, and those are still millions of dollars worth of businesses, and they're doing that because the regulations are more friendly. Now, as we were talking about government adoption, Ken, my question to you is that when governments adopt something like blockchain technology, we have spoken about how it can bring more transparency, but also there's a lot of sensitive data that the government handles. So, how can decentralized ecosystems, decentralized technologies allow the government to provide transparency, but then also provide security for such sensitive data to be transmitted on chain?
Yeah, so in general, this is also a problem for healthcare because they need the HIPAA compliance and things like that. And that there's ways you can do that on the blockchain where you can keep everything encrypted, and it's called fully homomorphic encryption. Speaking of geeking out, probably nobody knows what that means, but it just means that the data stays encrypted at all times, even while they do AI processing. It's still encrypted, and then it goes back to the server encrypted. We also do with our infrastructure. We also slice that data up, so it's even more kind of scattered, and so you might have 1/1000th of a piece of the data, and so that can help governments when the privacy is a problem, and it's usually just privacy. They want to be transparent about how much money they're spending and stuff like that. It's more privacy from the end user that they don't want to expose their social security number, for example, things like that, where blockchain can really help with that, even though it is a public ledger. If you keep things encrypted and only the transactions that are happening and the payments that are going out, then I think you're pretty good in the government sense, so that they can preserve the privacy of the people that have voted them in. So.
Greg, I have another question for you. Probably this is going to be my last question to you before the closing. But my question to you, Greg, is how is the city of Palo Alto working actively to adopt Web3? And since we were talking about privacy and security of people's data, what measures are you taking while you adopt Web3 and start upgrading your systems to use that?
Sure. Well, the short answer is nothing, unfortunately. But I did propose several ideas, and I got a lot of bad press because of it, because people are like, Councilman Tanaka is like trying to do this crypto stuff, scam me, this and that, and so it didn't go over very well. So definitely need to do better marketing or better lobbying. In Palo Alto, have any of you guys been to downtown Palo Alto lately? Like, okay, a few of you guys. Okay, hopefully you guys will go more often, because Palo Alto really needs it. We were talking a little bit before, but Palo Alto's sucking wind financially. We're just losing money like crazy because we need more people to shop and dine there. And so one of the ideas I had was to actually, there's actually a startup doing this, was to use kind of like Web3 technology, some token technology, to incentivize people to kind of spend money in Palo Alto. I thought it was a great idea. I mean, the startup was willing to fund it. It would have been something which would help bring more business to Palo Alto. And unfortunately, my colleagues were just, no matter how many times I explained it, even when I tried to explain it like they're 5 years old, I could not get through. They could not understand. And so,
where did they get caught? Like, where did the problem really lie?
I think you can't overestimate or underestimate people's technical or lack of technical knowledge. And I think I think we got past first base. I mean, I was trying to basically had this. I forgot the name of the startup, but it was basically incentivizing people to spend money at local restaurants and retailers. And the Web3 technology would have secured everything, and also it would have given people incentives to, like, if you bike to work, you get these incentives, right? Then you spend the money in Palo Alto. So they had this whole thing going on, but it was really complex for the staff. And then also staff, so this is something that people don't realize of government. People think of government as whoever's elected, but actually that's just the tip of the iceberg. Government is actually all the staff members, and these are not elected people. These are heavily unionized. These are people you cannot fire, basically. They're the bureaucracy. And the bureaucracy really is not really into this kind of stuff, because for them, it's really, they want to minimize the amount of risk. They're not into sticking their neck out, right? There's no upside for them. And so unfortunately, this thing which I thought would be good, which is do something eco-friendly, get some tokens to wine and dine in Palo Alto, straight for the way to start doing this kind of stuff. I can't remember the name, but if I said it, you guys probably know what it is. Could not make it happen, unfortunately. And so I think that I think we need better education. I think it's great that the city of San Francisco has held this. I think that's great. And so I think a little bit more forward thinking, but certainly the city of Palo Alto, even though Palo Alto is kind of the epicenter of tech, a lot of amazing technology start out of Palo Alto. The city itself, the government itself, is actually very, very conservative.
Ken, my question to you, just again, we are talking about the lack of accessibility to these resources that we have in education, right? And what I'm going to ask you is, what are you doing as part of Genius AI and Genius Ventures in order to provide education and resources, especially to the underserved communities, right? Like, I know a lot of us in the room, we are all tech folks, but like Greg was saying, there definitely is a huge lack of education, and the common man doesn't understand Web3. And unfortunately, what they first see the scams.
So in our system, we actually hide the technology inside of like a game that you play on your phone or your home computer. So you actually don't really actually know that you're using crypto. And so we found that beneficial because we can, like Malaysia wants to integrate with a lot of their resources that they have already there, but they also have a school that they started up that wants to learn AI programming. And so they can both leverage our Genius AI platform and then teach at their colleges the AI systems and integrate that into there so they can have their own kind of AI ecosystem. On top of it, it decentralizes the payments out to somebody that may not have a lot of money, but they probably have a phone more than likely, because even in Africa, there's a lot of phones sitting over there that they could leverage, and they can turn around and use that money for going to the doctor or doing something like that. So we've kind of, I wouldn't say on purposely hidden it, but we've tried to make it as zero friction as possible to integrate with our system. And that actually ended up being a blessing, because now they can utilize the technology. They don't have to worry about setting up a wallet or know even what crypto is, and they can just play games or watch movies. That's what one internet service provider is doing. So that's kind of our take on how we're trying to get it out to the masses and kind of.
Got it. And Cameron, I am actually going to ask you the same question too, because at Banyan, right, you have taken that responsibility of educating people. And by the way, the founder of Near, that Cameron is representing today, was also one of the first people to actually work on the transformer technology, which is what is leading the LLM revolution right now. So Cameron, again, AI, Web3, accessibility to these technologies, to these resources, to learn about this. How do you think can that be simplified? And what are you or Near as well as Banyan doing in order to enable that?
Totally. We don't call it crypto. We call it programmable money. We don't call it DePIN. We call it incentivized IoT. We don't call it, even blockchain. It's just distributed databases. It's like there are words that people understand. And I think one of the biggest issues is that we throw all this jargon, like quadratic funding, but we throw all this jargon and it's really confusing to people. And anyone who doesn't, know something, if they're being called out on it, like they retreat. Most people don't step into, like ignorance. They generally retreat. And so I think just calling it things that people understand is critical. Near currently has about 10 million weekly active users. And the reason for this is because we work with Web2 companies that would actually benefit from giving their users the option to own their money, data, and power of governance, which is to me like the whole point, and exit into crypto. Like Sweatcoin is a platform with over 100 million historical downloads, and the users have the option to claim a wallet and make their historically illiquid asset, the Sweatcoin, that was previously only exchangeable for yoga pants or shoes, into USDC that can be off-ramped. Like this is how we onboard normal people. It's not going to be by throwing all this jargon at them and then expecting them to pick it up. And so, I run this nonprofit. We've been doing this for a long time. We work with over 70 universities. We're very active in Latin America because everyone there knows what broken money looks like. And that right there is, I think, the whole reason why, we're building in this space. is to enable, give people things that they previously didn't have and solve real problems.
Thank you, Cameron. And with that, we're officially at time. I would love to thank again the Department of OEW for this TechSF initiative. Hopefully, we'll do something with TechSF in order to educate people more about Web3. And I want to give a quick shout out again to our panelists for making it today. Unfortunately, Miko was ill, or else he wanted to come here to this panel. So again, Cameron, Greg, Ken, thanks a lot for joining us here today. And thank you to every person in this room. You guys are lovely. We appreciate you being here. And hopefully, if you had some apprehensions about Web3, you'll at least go home and learn a little more, especially about the genuine work that is being done in the field. Thank you again, and Ken, over to you.